Welcome to video 2 of lesson 13. We're going to get into the major muscles of the body next. First, we're going to talk about the head muscles. So the frontalis is the muscle of the head that's going to cover the frontal bone. We talked about that one already when we looked at naming skeletal muscles. Orbicularis oculi are the muscles around your eyes. And anytime you see the word this orbi like this, it means that it's going to be kind of a circular muscle. So these are the muscles that are going to help you squint, blink, and wink. Buccinator is going to help you in chewing. It's going to be kind of found on the inside of your cheeks. The orbicularis oris is going to be the circle around your mouth. Your zygomaticus muscle is going to be your smiling muscle. So if you smile right now and you can kind of pinch your cheeks a little bit, that's your zygomaticus muscle. The masseter is going to help you elevate your mandible, so open your mandible, and then the temporalis is going to help you close the jaw. Okay, when we look at our neck muscles, we have the platysma. This is going to be a sheet-like muscle that covers the front and lateral sides of the neck. This is our frowning muscle. And then our sternocleidomastoid, which we've already talked about again when we talked about naming skeletal muscles. And this one is called the prayer muscle because it's often going to help you flex your neck. So this is your sternocleidomastoid. So what it's going to do is as it shortens, it's going to pull your neck down. So like when you're praying. Okay, now the front of the trunk. The pectoralis major, you also have a pectoralis minor, but the pectoralis major is going to be the large muscle that covers the upper part of your chest. So you've heard people talking about working out their pecs at the gym. Here it is right here. So it's this large muscle covering the front of the chest. And then your intercostal muscles are deep muscles that are found between your ribs. And actually it helps to raise your rib cage when you take a deep breath in. So that picture down below of this rotating guy is showing you your intercostal muscles. All right, now we're getting into our trunk muscles. The rectus abdominis, the external and internal oblique are the first ones we're going to talk about. So the rectus abdominis is the most superficial muscle of the abdomen, and it really is going to run up and down like this, okay? And it's going to help you flex the vertebral column, which pretty much means you are doing a crunch. Anytime you do a crunch or a sit-up, you're flexing your vertebral column and working the rectus abdominis. Then you have your internal and external obliques, and they run in different directions, the fibers do. The internal oblique is going to be deeper, but they kind of have the same functions. They're going to help you bend laterally and rotate. So if we look here, this is going to show you all four of the muscles of the trunk. The last one is that transverse abdominis. It's the weakest of the muscles. And if you remember, the transverse term means side to side like this. Okay, so this is how those muscle fibers run. And if we look here, here's our rectus abdominis going up and down. Here's our external oblique, fibers running that angle, and then the internal oblique are going to run the opposite angle. Okay, now we're going to talk about the back. The trapezius is a very large muscle on the back, and this helps you elevate, depress, adduct the scapula. The latissimus dorsi, another pretty large muscle in the back, is going to help with shoulder extension, so bringing the shoulder backwards. Okay, you can think of doing a lat pull down at the gym. You're working your latissimus dorsi. Then the erector spinae are the muscles that are going to extend your back, so move your back backwards. It's also going to help with your posture. And they really span the entire vertebral column from the skull all the way kind of down to the butt. So if we look here, these are the erector spinae muscles. So you can see that they are really spanning the entire length of the back. Over here is your trapezius, and when you get into your higher level anatomy classes, you actually break this down into a superior and inferior trap when you're working on different exercises for people. And then your latissimus dorsi, or your lats, are this very large muscle here. Few more, the quadratus laborum is going to basically form part of the abdominal wall, kind of more on the back side, and it's going to help you flex laterally and extend the very low part of your back. And then the deltoid is your primary mover for arm abduction. So when you do a deltoid raise, that's when you're usually bringing the arms out away from your midline. Okay, now we're going on to the arm, which is going to be the biceps and the triceps, the ones that we're really going to know the most. So your biceps originate from two heads, remember, two organs, okay? That's why it's called bi. And really its primary action is going to be elbow flexion, so bringing the elbow up. Then you have the brachialis and the brachioradialis, which kind of also assist in that elbow flexion. The brachialis is just deep to the bicep muscle. And then on the back side of your arm, you have the triceps brachii. So you have three heads with the triceps, or three organs. And this is really the only one that's going to help with elbow extension excessively. Okay, so if we look here, this was that deltoid muscle that we talked about earlier. This is your bicep brachii. Okay, so bicep right here, it's a pretty big muscle. Below it, in this area, is the brachialis. And then the brachioradialis is going to be more in this area. It goes up into here. So all three of these muscles are going to help with elbow flexion. And then your deltoid is going to help with shoulder abduction. All right, and then on the back, here's another picture of the deltoid that I kind of just wanted you to see, because you can see the trapezius and the latissimus dorsi. And then here is that triceps brachii that we've been talking about on the back. That's going to be for elbow extension. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the gluteus muscles. You have a gluteus maximus and a gluteus medius. These are powerful hip extenders. So these are going to be basically kind of throwing the hip backwards. Then you have the iliopsoas muscle, which is composed of the iliacus and the psoas major. This is going to help with hip flexion. So if you're walking upstairs, bringing the hip up to go on another step, that's hip flexion. Then you have a group of muscles called the adductor muscles. They're going to adduct the leg. So these are going to be on the inside of the thigh. These would be like if you were squeezing your thighs together, you're going to be working your adductor muscles. Okay, so if we look here, here's our gluteus maximus, a very, very large muscle. And then the gluteus medius is going to be in this area here. And then if we look on the front, here's your adductor group that we were talking about. It's going to be on the medial thigh. So if you're squeezing your thighs together, you're working your adductors. And then here's that iliopsoas muscle. They lie a little bit on like the coxal bones up there. And they help with hip flexion. All right, the back of the leg is going to contain what we call the hamstring group. You hear people talk about their hamstrings all the time, but you probably didn't know that it was a group of three muscles. And the hamstring groups are going to help with knee flexion, so bending the knee, and also thigh extension, just like in the gluteus muscles. So you have your bicep femoris, the semimembranosus, and the semitendinosus. Those are going to be your three hamstrings. And then on the front of the leg is something called the sartorius, which is a really thin and strap-like muscle. I always remember it because it kind of like goes across the thigh, and this is going to help with flexion. So if we look here, here's our hamstring group. So here's our gluteus maximus, and then here's our semimembranosus is going to be the most medial. The tendinosus is going to be the middle one, and then the biceps femoris is going to be the most lateral one here. And then here, before we talk about the quadriceps, here is that sartorius muscle. See how it kind of comes across the thigh? All right, now let's talk about your quadriceps. These are gonna help with knee extension, so straightening the knee, and also hip flexion. Your quadriceps have 4 muscles, and they're really named for where they're located, which is nice. The vastus lateralis is going to be the one that's on the lateral portion of the thigh. The vastus medius is in the middle. The rectus femoris is going to be the most superficial. It's the one that you can really see easily. That's your rectus femoris. It's what makes the patella tendon to go down into the patella. And then the vastus medialis is going to be more interior or more medial here, okay? So you have the lateralis on the lateral side. The medialis is going to be most on the medial portion. The intermedius is going to be below the rectus femoris, and then the rectus femoris is going to be the one that you can see the most. All right, moving to the lower leg, the tibialis anterior is a pretty big muscle in the front. Okay, you can see it right here, tibialis anterior. It's going to help with dorsiflexion. So if you put your heel on the ground and lift your toes up, you can really feel your tibialis anterior. It's a pretty large muscle. Then you have your extensor digitorum longus, which is going to be lateral to the tibialis anterior, and it's going to help with toe extension and also dorsiflexion. The fibularis muscles are a group of 3 muscles, and they're labeled for you over here. You have a longus, a brevis, and a tertius, and they're going to help with plantar flexion and eversion of the foot. And then on the back of the leg, we have the gastrocnemius, also known as your calf muscle. This is going to help with plantar flexion. This is your primary plantar flexion muscle. So when you go up on your toes to do a calf raise, you're really working out your gastrocnemius muscle. This is what is also creating that Achilles tendon that's attached to the calcaneus. You've definitely, especially if you're an athlete, you've heard of people tearing their Achilles tendon. That's what it's connected to. And a lot of times when you tear your Achilles tendon, the foot just kind of like drops and hangs there because you're unable to do proper plantar flexion. And then the soleus is deep to the gastrocnemius, and it also helps with plantar flexion, but your gastroc is your primary mover of that plantar flexion. So that is it. Those are the major muscles that you're going to be required to know for this class. Thanks for watching. Make sure you've filled out your note guide and you're ready to do your assignments.